So I wanted to share with you guys what it was like to meet Jordan Peterson in person. So a few weeks ago, I flew down to Sydney to see Jordan when he was in Australia doing his Australian tour for his book 12 Rules of Life. I unfortunately missed out on Brisbane tickets. They were all sold out. Sold out in Brisbane, sold out in Sydney, sold out in Melbourne. I was devastated. I didn't even realize he was coming here yet. And then, because I just looked it up on Google, because I heard through one of the Q&As he was coming to Australia, I found the Arrow Events website, and they said, we're going to ask Jordan Peterson's team to see if Jordan's going to come back to able to do another second event in Sydney. And they published eventually that his team, Jordan's team, said no. We're not going to do another event in Sydney. And so I was disappointed. I thought, oh no, I can't even see Jordan. I've been following him since 2015, early 2015, before he was famous, when he only had 4,000 subscribers. And I thought, man, I got to see this guy, because it's important to see great people. It's important to see people you really look up to. It's important to take the time to invest in such events. And so I was bummed that I missed it. But then, out of a stroke of, I don't know, whoever negotiated it, I got an email saying there's going to be some pre-sale tickets. And one more event, only one, but in Sydney. So I live in Brisbane, so I thought, hey, I don't care. I'm going to pool together my money. I actually don't have that much money, to be honest. But I thought I'm just going to book a one-night hostel and sleep in a share room, which I did in Sydney. So I flew down to Sydney, booked that hotel, and went to the event and saw Jordan Peterson. I brought my book, my hardcover book of 12 Rules for Life, and it was fantastic seeing him live in his speech. As he said before, he actually doesn't repeat the same thing. I mean, he's got his stories that he repeats, but he tries to say it in a new way. And it really did sound different. And so I'm very familiar with his content, right? Over all those years, watching all his Maps of Meaning lectures, all his personality lectures, all of those different interviews he's given, long and in-depth interviews. But watching him live, he did introduce the information in a new, fresh, interesting way. But the most important thing I want to convey is it's not just the information. It's, you could really feel his emotions, because you're actually physically present in the room. And you could feel his feeling about these ideas. And that really made it different. It gave a different element to the whole experience of his content. It's like, wow, I can feel what this man's saying. That gave an added layer of understanding somehow to the concepts he was conveying, and he articulated them in a fresh and new, revivified way in person. And so then he stayed after, right? So he stayed after, and there was a really long line. I stayed in the line for like 4 hours. I was standing in line for 4 hours. But this man was signing every single book, talking to every single person, and taking a photo with every person for probably about 4.5 hours. So I stayed there until about 1 o'clock in the morning. Okay, and I finally got to speak with him, and there was about half an hour worth of more people to see him after that. So he probably stayed until about 1:30 at night talking with his fans, and I really thank him for doing that. And it was so interesting. I only got probably about 30 seconds, maybe a minute with him. Most people only got about 30 seconds to a minute with him. And so I'll show a photo here of us together. I completely forgot to look at the camera. You meant to look at the camera, take a quick photo. I just completely forgot. Talking about the orienting reflex, I was focused on the most important thing, most meaningful thing to me at the time was Jordan, his face. I wanted to look right in his eyes to see what he looked like and how he'd respond to me. And, I said thank you, and I felt a bit kind of out of my element. It was so surreal to see him in person. Was so surreal. After watching him for hours, it was bizarre. But you know what? His eyes. He has the kindest eyes. You look at his eyes and you think, wow. You can just tell he's intelligent by looking at his eyes. You look at them and you think, wow, that's a different type of person. You don't see this type of person every day. You just don't. The depth in his eyes, they were so, like it was 1 o'clock in the morning, so he was tired, obviously, but they looked so deep, and what I'll say is he had such a, like a very loving demeanor about him. He was very strong with his ideas. Like as soon as you finished a sentence, he'd answer. He was so quick with the way he responded and so firm. His voice was so firm, strong, and quick. Like he was so engaged with you. His voice was so strong, projected so much certainty that you were like, wow, this person's intelligent. They're strong. They know what they're saying. They know what they're doing. They're on the ball. He was really mentally on the ball, like quick, right? But at the same time, he was also very loving. You could see it in his eyes. He really cared. You could also see it, you could feel it in the way he shook your hand. And the gestures, his bodily gestures were very kind and loving, like almost kind of nurturing, and I guess that's what you expect out of a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, right? And so that really impacted me. When he shook my hand and like he shook my hand when I met him and he shook my hand when I left, and his eye contact, and I looked at right in his eyes, because I want to kind of psychoanalyze him. Like I want to see, what's this person like? What's he feeling? What do I feel from this person? Because I'm a feeling type person. I get a kind of a bubbling up of who a person is by looking at them and engaging with them on an emotional level. And he really had that nurturing side to him. He really did care about people. And but yet he was so quick to answer. And I said to him, I thanked him, and he signed my book. He said, "Who is it to?" I said, "Jared Chan." He signed my book, gave it to me. I said, "Thank you so much. I've been watching you, following you since early 2015, since you only had 4,000 subscribers." And straight away, he was like, "Whoa, that's a long time." Like he was so quick, like he explosive with his passion and energy. Even it's 1 o'clock in the morning and he's still like, "Oh, that's a long time," like kind of engaging with me and being like, wow, like trying to interact with me. And I thought, and then and I was like, yeah, thanks for the hours and hours of content, like it's been amazing and it's really helped me. And then I said, just a quick question. And he's like, and I'm like, you said that you write 3 hours a day to write your Maps of Meaning book, and you did that for 10 years. And then I said, how can I kind of be like that? How can I, develop that same type of discipline in my life? And as I said the question, I kind of wasn't really looking at his face. But then I switched after I finished asking my question, and I looked him right in the eye because I just wanted to pay attention right to what he was like. And he picked up on that. He picked up on, wow, this person is looking right at me. Because I could just tell he could pick up on the fact that I switched from asking the question kind of nervously and not giving him my contact, then focusing in and becoming comfortable with kind of really taking on his response. Because I wanted to like hear from him, and I didn't know what question to ask him. Like you had to ask him something to feel like it was worth it, right? So that's the question I came up with after 4 hours of sitting there in the line waiting for him. And he said straight away, as soon as I finished the answer, like my question, he immediately answered. He said, "Start smaller. You have to start smaller. Start with just 30 minutes a day." And he's like, even 15 minutes a day, but every day. And he's like, and do it in the morning because that's when you're the smartest. And that's how he spoke. He's like, and do it in the morning. Like, it was like so strong, such a strong answer. And he said a few other things. Like he was like, it took me some time to kind of carve out that time and stuff like that. But if you start small and you incrementally do it every day, and you write every day, and he's like, you're talking about writing, because he wanted to know about writing, and I said, yes, writing. And he's like, yeah, do it every day, just a little bit every day. And man, it was obviously, like, it's pretty obvious stuff from even watching his lectures. You can probably get that type of information, but having him say that to me in person was significant to me, because you get that kind of emotional reassurance from a personal interaction one-on-one with him. And so it was a great experience. I would definitely go to see him again if I could. And I've had a few interactions with him on the live Q&As. I don't know yet if I'll tag them onto the end of this video, just so I can document kind of my interaction with Jordan Peterson. I guess I might be geeking out a little bit here, but yeah, it was great to see him. I really enjoyed it, and I feel like I've taken a lot away from it, because it's not about just worshiping one man or something like that. It's just that his ideas have impacted my life, and I feel like I was able to take away something special from that experience. Because even now, I had a few dreams since then that I feel like are really significant. And one of those dreams, just briefly, is that I dreamed I was in this kind of library, and I heard this voice say, oh, let's just get some young Jungian. And then there were all these second-hand books by Carl Jung, and I got at least 3 or 4 of these second-hand books by Carl Jung, and I sat down at a table, and I looked over, and Jordan Peterson was at another table, sitting down and reading and writing. And then I was sitting down at my table, and I was like, oh, well, I'm about to read and write, and so that's kind of like, it's confirmation to me, at least, of my desire to want to follow in his footsteps, in the sense of I want to educate myself. I want to really become more and know more, not to be like him, but to be my own version of who I am. I might interpret things differently. I might create something completely different to what he created out of educating myself. But it's what I want to do. I want to follow in his footsteps, in the sense that he educated himself and he got into these people like Carl Jung and all the different psychology that he talks about in philosophy, and Jordan, actually, in the live Q&A, when he answers my question, he recommends, because I said that I'm going to, I've been studying Carl Jung. He mentions, study Nietzsche as an adjunctive to Carl Jung. And so it's really inspired me in my own development, my own learning, and influenced me in a way which I'm profoundly grateful for. So thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I might play the Q&A interaction between me and Peterson now, but please subscribe if you enjoyed this, because I've been releasing a series on Carl Jung, and I'll continue to learn and always grow and update whatever I'm doing. I'm also exercising more, and I'm doing my plant-based diet, so if you like that stuff, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.
Jared Chan says, you claim hierarchies are efficient enough, yet you claim 99% of creative people get stuck at the bottom. Oh, yeah, well, that's not a contradiction. What kind of propels you up hierarchies of authority is intelligence and conscientiousness, right? And so then you might say, well, what about creativity? And it looks like creativity is, as you sort of know, is an out-of-the-box phenomena. And the problem is that if you're within a hierarchy, there's a ladder upward that you can climb rung by rung. And basically to do that, you have to do your damn job. Now you might say, yeah, well, isn't creativity, necessary? And the answer to that is absolutely, but it's not that useful when you're at the bottom, because who the hell wants to hear your damn creative ideas when you're just starting out? You're just a pain in the neck. Even if you're right, even if you're brilliant, you're just a pain in the neck if you're creative at the bottom, because you're coming up with all these radical ideas that are going to shake up the structure of the hierarchy. And plus, you haven't what indicated your credibility. You haven't demonstrated your credibility to any great degree. So people are going to just write you off they're just going to write you off because it's easier than taking you seriously. Now, the funny thing is that as you climb up the hierarchy, creativity becomes increasingly necessary until when you're at the very top, it's absolutely vital. And many companies suffer from the fact that they, promote conscientious people continually up the ladder, and then they end up at the top with no creative people. But it's hard for the creative people to climb to the top because creativity isn't one of those things that ratchets you up a hierarchy of competence. So they're efficient on the conscientious end and efficient on the intelligent end, but creativity is a whole different thing. I mean, partly because how the hell do you evaluate a creative person? You can't, by definition, because to have a structure of evaluation means that something has to be done in a tried and true and measurable manner, and that isn't what a creative person does. Like they make a left turn, a 90-degree turn, and they say, well, I'm going to do it completely differently. It's like, well, how is someone going to evaluate you if you do that? Now, you might be right, and creative people are often wrong, but sometimes and vitally dead right when no one else is. But it's really problematic. I mean, if you're a creative person, your best bet, I would say, is to discipline yourself and ground yourself in something relatively practical that will enable you to eke out some sort of living, and then to practice your creative endeavor on the side. You can head headlong into it and try to make money and be creative at the same time. But I'll tell you, man, my experience has taught me, and this is a lot of experience and a lot of watching, and it's not something I'm happy to say, is that it's very difficult for creative people to monetize their creativity, and most of the time it's an exercise in futility. So what you have to do is stabilize yourself in some sort of productive and traditional domain, and then use your extra time to work creatively and see if you can branch out that way. You can always try to start a small business too, or even a big business, but again, that's a high risk, high return proposition, and there's a technology that goes along with that too. You can't do that like a fool. You have to know what you're doing in order to do that. So Jared Chan says, I just wanted to thank you very much. Love you heaps, man. LOL. I'm slowly reading all of Jung's books thanks to you. Well, you have to read them slowly, man. There's no way you can read those fast. Like, watch out for yourself, because those things play vicious games with your mind. So, praying for you. Well, good. I could use some prayer, man. So, thanks, Jared. Much appreciated. So, good luck with the reading. And, make sure you're doing something practical and easy at the same time, because Jung, he's hard on person. That's for sure. If you really want to twist your head in a knot, you could do some reading. You could read some Nietzsche at the same time. It's a nice adjunct. Though Jung wrote some books on Nietzsche, like his commentaries on Thus Spake Zarathustra. So, good to hear from you. Thanks very much, man.